I am Joni Robbins, and I'm the purchasing director with the Department of Transportation. And just wanted to start out talking a little bit about transportation and who we are. Obviously, we are the agency that's responsible for connecting people and products and places safely and efficiently across the state of North Carolina. And what you see before you are the different divisions and business units within the Department of Transportation. Starting at the top left, that is our Highways Division of Highways. We have representation from our Aviation Business Unit, DMV. We have Rail, we have Ferry. We also have the ports, and we have Turnpike as well as the global transport part. And we also have integrated mobility. So those are the pieces or the divisions and business units within the Department of Transportation. And we're going to talk today about these topics that you see in front of you. So we're going to talk about the rules for of state procurement for this for North Carolina. We're going to talk about how you register with the state. We're going to talk about the electronic vendor portal. We're going to talk about some purchasing methods, seeking competition. What does that mean? Solicitation methods. What are the different kinds? How do we solicit bids? We're going to talk about evaluations, methods. Once we have the bids, how do we evaluate them? The award process, what does that look like? We're going to have some conversation about that. And also, we're going to talk about contract monitoring. So, let's get started. So, in this section, we're going to cover rules and laws. What's the difference between a rule and a law pertaining to purchasing for the state of North Carolina? When it comes to goods and services, what's considered a good and what's a service? What do you mean by delegation and what about policy? What are those two things? And we're also going to talk about the different types of contracts. So I would like to start off talking about the hierarchy in terms of purchasing for the state of North Carolina. Like what determines for us how we do that, the rules. So first we have the General Assembly who enact the general statutes, which is really legislation and basically laws, right? And then from those laws, we have constructed rules to enact the laws, and we call that the administrative code. And out of the administrative code, we have put together some policies on how we are going to do that thing that was made a law, right? And that you will see in the procurement manual. So there's a North Carolina procurement manual, and it identifies the course of action that the agencies will use in following the rules. And then I also got an arrow pointing to the biggest spot on this screen, which is the agency purchasing manual, which at the top right, the North Carolina procurement manual, that's really the Department of Administration has a division of purchasing contracts for all non-IT purchases. They have the responsibility or the oversight of all the agencies for purchases that are over the agency delegation. And so they have a governing, if you will, procurement manual, and then each agency has their own purchasing manual, but it has to be in line with, it cannot conflict with the Division of Purchasing Contracts manual. So, and generally, the agency manual is really talking about procedures, like exactly how you're going to do that, what form you're going to use, who you're going to contact, what's the time frames we're talking about, those sorts of things. And I also always add the OSBM budget manual as well because it offers us guidance in the procurement process as well. So the governing authority, as I kind of mentioned earlier, for purchasing in the state of North Carolina is really like Division of Purchasing Contracts, which has all non-IT goods and services. One, they they are governed by the general statutes or the laws, right? And those, if you look at general statutes, chapter 143, article 3, you will see specifically what the laws are that pertains to purchasing non-IT goods and services for the state of North Carolina. And then if you go to Administrative Code, Title 1, Chapter 5, you'll also see the details of what that is. For IT purchases, we do have the Department of DIT, and they obviously covers all goods and services that are IT related, and those general statutes or the laws that governs those IT purchases are found in Chapter 147, and Administrative Code for that is in Title 9, Chapter 6. I also added the State Construction Office because obviously they are responsible for the renovation or the alteration of any physical property that belongs to the state, and their purchasing guidelines are found in or their purchasing requirements, the laws are found in chapters 116, 143, and 153 that is there. And they also have a construction manual that talks about the specific procedures or processes that they use in doing purchases for construction. Again, renovation or alteration of a physical property that belongs to the state. So we want to talk about who are your potential customers. So what opportunities do you have to work with the state? And so there are several. You see, we have 28 executive state agencies. We have, we have 58 community colleges, 16 public universities, over 2,500 public and charter schools in the state. There are 100 counties and over 500 municipalities. So there are plenty of opportunities to get work with the government in the state of North Carolina. What I listed here is really the state agency and the supporting organizations. So if you look at the column that says type of agencies, all the ones I like to point out that all the ones that says cabinet, though the folks who run those agencies, they are appointed by the governor, right? And then the ones in the middle that says council, those agency heads or the persons who run that agency, those are our elected officials. And then listed at the bottom are the support agencies for the state. So let's talk about getting to this discussion about procurement. When we talk about need, what are we identifying? What kind of questions are we trying to answer? So for us, the agency, we need to know the answer to these questions. What are we buying? How much does it cost? Do we have funding? And how do I buy? What process do I use? And what documentation is needed in that? Specifically, purchasing folks procedures are determined by how much money you're going to spend, right? What are you trying to buy? And of course, we're looking at, is it a good as a service? What's the delegation? Is it over hours or below it? Is it a mandated resource for this? Or are we going to use the open market? And we'll talk a little bit more about what those things are in a moment. And are there any special circumstances? We'll also talk about that in just a second. So when we talk about goods or services, we are talking about like a good is all commodities or supplies and materials. Anything that's tangible is considered a good. And these are just some examples, just something that you can actually touch. And for all goods that are purchased under General Statute 143, there is a vendor charge of 1.75%. And office supplies, another example of tangible goods that we purchase. When services, we're talking about something that's intangible. It's really a task that an individual or a company does, and it requires like special knowledge, expertise, some experience. And an example of that is like this plumbing. services that's happening, or this power washing that's going on. So these are services, and those are the differences between the two. When I talk about mandated resources, before we buy anything, we must first consider these entities that you see here on the screen. Is there a mandatory state term contract that's in place? Well, we're going to talk about state term contracts in a moment, but is there a mandated state term contract in place? Is it something that we want to buy, the good or service that we want to buy? Is it something that's offered by Correction Enterprise or any of the other entities that are listed here? If there are, then we are mandated, we are required to use that source for that good and or services. Statewide term contracts. So it's a contract that's really established by the Division of Purchase and Contracts, and for non-IT, and then statewide DIT procurement does the state term contracts for IT purchases. And they're used by all agencies unless there's some statute that exempts, or some special terms or condition that exempts the agency from having to use it. A state term contract can be either mandatory or convenient. If it's mandatory, it means that the agency has to use it, or we have to document and get permission for not using it. For instance, if we wanted to purchase office chairs, let's just say, I know Correction Enterprise provides those. And so if we are looking for a particular office chair, we justify that we have to have a particular type and when we need it, and all those particulars. If we contact Correction Enterprise and they don't have that particular chair, or they can't provide it when we need it, then they will give us a waiver, and we will be able to then do a open market process to get that chair and not have to buy it from Correction Enterprise. So there are, there are avenues in which we may not use a mandatory, but if they had it and they could provide it, then we were required to buy it from, we would be required to buy it from Correction Enterprise. If the state term contract is identified as being a convenience contract, that means that it's at the discretion of the agency or the community college to use it or not. It's convenient. P&C or DIT put it in place. So if we want to use it, we can. We don't have to go out and source it. They've already sourced it. We can use it, but we don't have to. It's convenient. We can use it or not. It's searchable. There's these state term contracts are searchable. So there are a complete list of all the state term contracts that's out there on Division of Purchase and Contracts website, or DIT websites for IT ones. We believe that these state term contracts offer lower prices, good quality products, and a shorter delivery time span. Open market delegation. This is a procurement that's purchased according to the rules and regulations that's set forth by the state, right? Those general statutes are the administrative code that we talked about earlier. When there is no mandatory resource in place for it, right? So there is not a state term contract. None of the preferences given agencies or entities have it. Then we would do what we call an open market purchase. Delegation is really that maximum amount of money that the agency or the community college or university is set, in which is really governed by the state procurement officer who resides in Purchase and Contracts, the Division of Administration, the Department of Administration Division of Purchase and Contracts. The state purchase officer sits there, and he either approves or raises or decreases each agency, community college, university delegation, just based on some factors. If DOT wants to purchase most delegations for most of us is $50,000. Um, and if we purchase something that's under that delegation, or unless we have a special exemption from it, then we don't, if it's under $50,000, we are not required to go through the overarching agencies, whether for non-IT, remember that's the Division of Purchasing Contracts. For IT, there's a statewide IT procurement office and it will have to go there. If it's over $50,000, then I must engage with PNC or DIT, unless again, I have a special delegation in place. I'm sorry, special exemption in place in which it's already agreed upon that for this particular product or service, then I don't have to go through them because one, most likely when you get those there, and DOT has a lot, as you can imagine, what we do is kind of one off, right? Now, a lot of agencies do what we do. We obviously maintain the roads for the state, across the state, and all the maintenance that's related to building and construction and the maintenance that's related to that. And so there's some very specific types of materials and services that we need to do that. And so we have quite a few special exemptions in place in which we do not have to seek the approval of the Division of Purchasing Contracts for those purchases. What I have here is an example of a purchasing policy. Now, this pertains to NCDOT. If you're working with another agency, it may look slightly different in the small purchase or micro purchase category, but typically in the informal and formal, they should be fairly similar to this. So for NCDOT, if you're purchasing something less than $10,000, we consider that to be a micro purchase, and we encourage our business unit in different division of highways to use their P card for those purchases, right? They don't even come to my department. If it's $10,000, $10,001 up to the small purchase delegation of 29,000, then we require a current informal vendor quote, right? We're going to use our RQ or IFB. We'll talk about those solicitation documents. We'll talk a little bit about those in a moment as well. And then for those purchases, that's $29,001 up to $50,000. We consider that to be an informal purchase, and competition is required, but we don't have to advertise it, meaning that we're going to get 3 quotes, right? We are going to manually seek competition, but we are not going to post it. We're not going to advertise it. And we are going to seek competition. We're going to use our documents, our solicitation documents, because the vendor is required to agree to the North Carolina terms and conditions. And so attached to our solicitation documents are those T's and C's, so terms and conditions. For anything that's $50,001 and up is considered to be a formal purchase. And we are we're required to advertise it on the open market. So we will post it unless we have a approved waiver. We'll talk a little bit about waiver competition as well. Again, the vendor is required to agree to the North Carolina terms and conditions, and therefore we will be using our solicitation documents for those purchases in that category. Let's talk just a little bit more about state term contracts. Again, it's a binding agreement between the purchaser and the vendor. That's the basic definition of what a term contract is. It can be mandatory or convenience, as we stated earlier. It's established for the use of all the agencies unless there's an exemption by statute, rule, or special terms and conditions. There's also a agency-specific term contract that can be put in place, and it's pretty much what it says. It's an agency term contract, meaning NCDOT, again, we kind of specialize in what we do in terms of the construction and maintenance of the state roads across the state of North Carolina. And so if there are a service and or good, a product that we have 14 divisions that spread across North Carolina. And so if there is a product that all 14 divisions use and use frequently, then it makes sense for my office to put a term contract in place that's agency specific, meaning it is just for NCDOT. And so it makes sense because again, we're going after, lower prices, good quality product. We don't have to each time the different divisions want to purchase this item. We don't have to do a new solicitation. We would have already solicited, gone through the competitive process, and have a contract in place that all 14 divisions can use. So that is what an agency specific term contract is. And for most contracts, there's a standard 3 years. That's two. Most of them would look like 1 year with two optional renewable years attached to them. So, which if the renewal use option is actually um, activated, then again it would just be a total of 3 years. We do have contracts that are longer than 3 years, but it requires the approval, review and approval for non-IT for purchase and contracts, and then for statewide IT procurement if it's an IT contract. So let's talk a little bit about what a consultant contract and what's a contractual service contract. So service contract is really, again, it's an independent vendor who performs a work or a task, right? They have to have specialized knowledge, skills, and experience. Those are some examples there that, we consider a service contract, janitorials, got landscaping, even medical lab services, all these type of contracts require specialized knowledge, some skills, and some experience in actually doing that. If it's a consultant contract, then it requires specialized knowledge, some expertise, and some professional qualification. But in this case, we are we are asking them to investigate a problem or project and to provide us with some counsel, with some analysis or advise us, right? So they're not going to do a physical task for us. They're not going to perform any specific task for us. They are going to give us advice. They are going to consult with us around what they have found when they looked at the problem or the project that we asked them to look at. And another thing for consultant services, we are required to get the approval from the governor's office to have those in place. And that's that approval from the governor's office is a seamless process, meaning that you won't even know that it's happening, but it's a part of our approval process and it's something that we are required to do. And of course, we get the 1099 form for any services that's performed over $600. Talked about the Department of Information Technology, DIT, and again, these are their general statutes in which they work under some things that they purchase as IT purchases. Certainly they do a lot of license agreements, as you can imagine, online database subscriptions. Obviously, we buy hardware and software. Again, they have their own statewide IT procurement office that governs and reviews or provide their oversight for IT purchases as well. I mentioned waivers of competition, and so let's talk about a little bit about what they are. It really means that you purchase something by some means other than a competitive process, right? There are some very specific conditions in which the state of North Carolina has indicated by statute, right? It's in administrative code. These are the conditions in which you can waive competition. And so I listed like the top five that are more commonly used conditions. If it's a sole source, meaning we can only get it from one vendor, right? One source. There's only one source to get it. Obviously, we're not going to do a competitive process because there's no one to compete with. This is the only vendor that we can get it from. If it's brand specific, if we have to have a particular type, and we can justify that, then we will we can be competitive because different vendors could offer that same brand, so we still could be competitive in that sense, but it is not an open competition because we are limited to that particular brand. If there's an emergency circumstance in which there is a potential loss of life, or there is impediment to a central process, then obviously we don't have that, the time doesn't allow a competitive process, then we will do a waiver and we will go ahead and get what we need to take care of that emergency. Standardization is really saying that, listen, I've always used this type and it makes sense when I'm buying additional ones to get the same thing. So we standardizing what this office uses, or what brand, what truck we're gonna buy or use, because we have equipment that's bought to fit a particular appendage that we've added to the truck, or if there's an ongoing job or task. We've already purchased some items to do this. We didn't get quite as many as we needed. We need to get additional ones, and so we don't want to compete. We want to go ahead and buy additional ones that we of the same type and model that we already purchased. So those are some conditions. Some, they're not the only ones, but those are the most commonly used justifications for waivers of competition. There's a lot, but I welcome any questions that you may have at this point.
All right. And we do not have questions in the chat. So if someone wants to raise their hand, we can take questions. And Jay Oglesby, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, good morning. Jay here with School and Office Solutions. You had mentioned the slide about the state term contract, the STC. How do we go about getting on that contract, or on that statewide term list per se?
So those are the state term contracts. If it's a non-IT, that is administered by the Department of Administration Division of Purchase and Contracts. So if you go to their website, you will be able to, and Paula can, when she sends out, she's going to send out the slide. So she also can, I'm sure, could include a link to that website. If you go there and look at and you need to look at the individual state term contract, because they all have a different beginning and end date, right? They're not all in sync. So what I would do, they also have a contact person's name and contact information that's in the Division of Purchase and Contracts, who is administering that contract. I will contact that person and ask them when would the decision be made as to whether they are going to resolicit for those particular items and or services that's on that contract, and they can let you know. And then you would need to, once the solicitation is posted, you would need to obviously bid on it and try to get on a contract that way. But I will contact the person that's listed on the state term contract as the administrator and ask them specifically when the bid it will be reposted, or even if there's an opportunity to be added to the contract. I don't know that that's always possible, but it could be in certain special circumstances. So you want to ask the question.
And we did place the link to that website in the chat. Mr. James Smith, I see your hand raised.
Yes. Quick question. So it looks like there are obviously multiple agencies, one of which is Parks and Recreation, which reached out to me a few weeks ago because they want to do some conservation classes called Leave No Trace, and I'm one of the few vendors in the area. But they also then requested, hey, you guys could do team building. How do I reach out? And I think I've asked this question before to someone else. How do I reach out to the different agencies? Are there points of contact that we can say, hey, we're a company here in North or Charlotte that does these specific things? Are there people that we can reach out to? Is it an agency, or is this listed somewhere where we can actually contact different agency department purchasing heads or whoever the appropriate person is?
Yes, there obviously each agency has a they may not all be called purchasing directors, they may be purchasing officers, or they may be called something different, but they are basically the manager of the purchasing department. Certainly their information and contact information is available, but most agencies now have what we call a vendor hub vendor liaison person on our team. And that certainly will be, if we reached out, that would be the person to contact, just to let them know that's a good point, a good way into the agency and getting information about the agency, and who within the agency, you may want to contact. Seems to me that what you are talking specifically about, we will want to get you in touch with our HR folks, right? And see with our training folks to see, just to let them know that, you're out there and you're available and what you're what you're offering and your experience in doing that, right? So, I currently have an open position for the health liaison. The person that was in the position, accepted another, offer outside of the state government. So, I have not filled it yet. So you're welcome to, send me your information, and I will relay that to folks in HR.
Okay. I appreciate it.
All
Absolutely.
right. We'll take a few more questions. Jonathan Hunt.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So in general, how do we, the jobs or whatever it may be that are not listed, that are not advertised, is there, it may follow up on James's question a little bit there, but how are we made aware of the jobs that are maybe sole sourced or directly assigned? It's just in general speaking, I guess.
Well, well, we'll talk a little bit more about that later in presentation, but just to answer your question, you need to be registered in our electronic vendor portal. And when you do your registration, you're going to identify that commodity or that good or that service or that you want to offer to the state. And that, when my team are looking for vendors that are, for solicitation or for purchases that are not being advertised, then they're going to look at that vendor portal, right? That information in that, by that commodity code, who's available, right? So we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but that's one way of doing that. And again, the vendor hub liaison that's resides in most agencies now would be a great point of contact as well.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Aurelio.
My question is about, as you mentioned, usually on EVP we can see the contracts, and I have a printing shop, so but one of the issues that I'm facing, and not only me, as when I speak even with the other minority owners, is that one of the criteria to select the vendor is based on experience. And it becomes difficult to go around this because on one hand, we have these programs that try to support the minority business because it is a recognition that in the past the access was not good. On the other hand, we have now contracts that say, well, if you want to have a contract, you have to have experience. So it becomes very difficult to to fill up that component when we try to one hand support a program that was not recognized. But I understand that, and I work. I direct several programs for USAID. I recognize that you have to assure the quality of the programs and deliver on time. But it looks to me that this access to the contracts is being very, very difficult. So what do you advise to go through this hurdle? Because it's a hurdle that is very difficult to go through.
So I appreciate your question. Thank you for asking it. And you are exactly correct. I do agree with the statement that you made, but I also agree with the state. And let me speak for agencies or my experience with it is that we have a responsibility to, when we are seeking vendors to perform a particular service or to provide a particular good or both, right? To make sure that that good and or service is going to be able to meet the qualification of an end user that we're making the purchase for. Because at the end of the day, right, they're responsible for that work being done and done on time and correctly. So while purchasing doesn't necessarily, we don't put the requirements together, that is the end user's prerogative as to how much experience they need in with certain needs that they have. Or so to answer your question, I think it's just a matter of being able to be diligent and continuing to apply and look for every opportunity to get some experience, even if it's a smaller one, right? Because that gives you experience. You can speak or point to where you have done this work in the past. I do recognize and acknowledge what you say, that this is a program that is geared towards companies that historically have been underutilized. So, and that's true. And we're making a pointed effort in trying to do better at that. But we also are trying to balance that with also meeting the needs, the qualifications and needs of the folks that we're making purchases for. So I do recognize the concern in that area. I would just say that I will continue to be diligent and take even, smaller jobs just to get me that experience until I'm able to, again, I will reach out to the different agency vendor liaisons just to let them know that I'm in this space and I'm willing to work. Is there a small, or can I, if there's a prime contract is the way most people like to refer to it. But if there's a bigger company who's been awarded a contract, is there an opportunity for you to work with them in order to get some experience? That's something that comes to mind for me, when I think about that. But I do recognize and acknowledge what you say, that it can be a tough spot to be in.
If you allow me, so just 30 seconds, please. One of the, I've been in business for 3 years, and I've been speaking with other minority business and women owners, and they found the same issue. And sometimes, because the state does not do small contracts, right? And sometimes, like, for example, at one point I was asked I was planning to apply for a contract, 300,000 envelopes. I have the capacity to print 5,000 envelopes, but I never did at once 300,000 envelopes. I print 500,000 envelopes a year, but not to one client only. So my question is, why is there any way that you can, for contracts that minority apply, in order to preserve like your responsibility and your needs to have a good outcome, this experience be replaced by, is there the capacity in that shop or not? Because sometimes we have the capacity to do the job, but we never had the opportunity to do the job. And when we try to sometimes do a partnership with a big organization, what's happened is that the big organization takes the information applied by themselves, and we never know afterwards. So basically, my suggestion is, the question should be: is this organization has the capacity or not to do this kind of job?
So I think that we can't just leave it at capacity, right? Quality is important, right? You can have the capacity, but your work may not be. I don't mean you personally, right? So we have a responsibility for that job in which we're trying to get done. So I don't think that it's feasible, right? That we're just going to look at capacity, right? We're going to in those cases, we are not going to be awarding. If we're looking at capacity, we're not awarding just based on price, right? We're looking at some other. It's going to be an evaluation that's going on. So there are going to be some other factors that are going to be considered. So, but I want to disagree with you. You stated, or I understood you to say, that the state doesn't work in small contracts. We do quite a lot of business in small contracts. It's not advertised, so you may not be aware of it. Again, that is another reason why I suggest that you make contact with the vendor liaison persons that are in most agencies, so that you can again make sure your information is accurate and that you have specifically identified that work that you are qualified to do, right? That you want to offer to the state, so that in those smaller capacities that are not advertised, and the purchasing specialists are looking specifically for a vendor that they're going to email a solicitation document to, or an opportunity to, that you have an opportunity to get that. So we do small contracts. We do work in small quantities, quite a bit of it actually. It's just a matter of knowing and who to contact and when they are available.
All right, we're going to take our last question from Erica so that we can move forward. Erica, if you would.
Okay, two clarifying questions. One is, I was told you got to have your DBE certification in order to work with the DOT. Is that accurate?
No. So one thing I want you to understand is that the Department of Transportation does different kinds of certification programs. DBE is just one of them. And there are some contracts that are set aside just for those. And for that, then if the requirement is there for that, then yes, you have to have it. But I cannot make it is not true to make a blanket statement that you have to have a DBE certification in order to get a contract into DOT. So no,
Okay.
That's not true.
And then the other clarifying question was that it's not, it wasn't just enough to have my DBE. I also had to get pre-qualified with the DOT.
So there are certain materials that are processes that does require pre-qualification. So yes, that is true.
Okay, so now I have my DBE and I have one pre-qualification, because apparently the pre-qualification isn't just across the board, it's at different specialties. So I got approved for the pre-qualification for asphalt repair, right? So that was fine. We are also a striping company, mostly a striping company. So I wanted to be pre-qualified to do striping, pavement markings. But I got a notice that said I cannot be pre-qualified for that because I don't have someone who is certified, and the certification requires a class, a test, and then 2,000 hours working under someone. And my question is, how will I get 2,000 hours? Ideally, the thought was I would try to maybe have one of my employees go work for a prime contractor to get that 2,000 hours, so then we can then have that pre-qualification designation. But what I'm learning is that with the prime contractors, they're obligated to contact me. However, they're not obligated to use me. So we've spent, thousands of hours submitting these bids to these prime contractors, only to recognize that they already knew who they were going to hire, but that they had to go through this process in order to maintain the integrity of the contract that they won. So I'm looking for ways to work around this process. How can I get in? I'm exhausted with options at this point. Like, do you have any suggestions? Any successful minority-owned businesses who have been able to infiltrate the process and have access to these types of opportunities?
So, Erica, hi, this is Shay McIntyre. I'm in the Hub Office of Business Development. And so your questions really, as Joni has said, those are specific to the DBE certification program. So let's get you in contact with the folks in that particular program, and we can talk more specifically about that. I'm going to go ahead and put my information in the chat, and we can talk that one offline, so that we get you to the right place.
Does that include the pre-qualification for the DOT?
That is all part, that is all tied to that DBE certification and how those projects then, being able to get business on that side. So yes, those are
great.
connected.
And I'll send you the correspondence I received, because it didn't come from DBE. It came directly from DOT.
Okay. All right. Sounds good.
All right. Thanks,
you,
Shay.
Shay.
And so Joni will move forward from this point.
Thank you. All right, so we are going to, now talk about, switch gears a little bit here and move into the process you need to follow if you want to do business with the state. So we're going to talk about the electronic vendor portal. We're going to talk about registration in the EVP and managing that account. So the EVP basics here, the takeaways from this slide are that it's a single cloud-based application. We think that we believe has enhanced features that offers greater efficiency. It provides a single point of access to North Carolina organizations or entities. All the solicitations will be posted there. You have the opportunity for those solicitations that are electronically submittable, that you can respond right in EVP. And as a reminder, for goods only, we do have that 1.75% fee that's attached to that. There have been questions around why do we need to, you need to pay that 1.75% fee. We think that, one, I want you to understand that fee kind of offsets the expense of having EVP, an electronic system, electronic procurement process in place. It also allows the state to conduct business electronically. And it also allows you as a vendor to be able to let us know, the state entities, what goods and or services that you're offering. And we think that it also has the added benefit of being process and time saving as well. And how do your company benefit by using EVP? We think there's a cost saving for you as well in doing electronic procurement. it increases our ability for accuracy of the order and consistencies. It's a single point of access to all the government entities. And it gives you increased access to all of the markets for the state government. This registration, obviously to start the process, you're going to need internet access. You're going to need your federal tax ID or your EIN number. You also going to obviously need a valid email address in order to be able to initiate the process. And you're going to get a copy of this presentation, and you see there's a link there for the login page and some instructions. And there's also contact information for the help desk in case you get stumped or you run into a problem. You can email or call them, and they have been very responsive and helpful from what I understand. The EVP, the electronic vendor portal, again, it's free. It's when you register, it's going to notify you of business opportunities in the different state agencies and community colleges. Remember, you will need to keep your information updated for contact reasons, as well as when agencies are searching for those for hub vendors, for those opportunities that are not advertised, right? We're going to be looking at EVP, so we need to make sure your contact and your goods and or service that you are willing and able to provide to the state is listed and accurately. Managing your account, there's a link there that you'll see, and some directions on how to change your password, how to update your profile information. If you need to add, delete, or edit your contact information, or edit your location, that information is there, and you'll be able to do that. Are there any questions?
Yes, this is Rhonda Caldwell. I was wanting to ask because I'm not registered, but I know I started the process some time ago, and I didn't finish it, unfortunately. But I wanted to ask, in the past, there was a list of things that were needed to register in the portal, as far as your taxes and a lot of those particular documents. Is that still the process? Or has that been, I guess the deliverables are a little less now?
I think those documents are still there. Shay or Carla, you guys want to help me out with that?
That's correct. They are still there if you are applying for the hub certification.
And just one caveat on that, you mentioned tax documents. The hub certification does not require, it has never required tax documents. So you're either referring there to the NC Small Business Enterprise Program, if that's what you needed to upload. So we have the hub certification, then we have the North Carolina Small Business Enterprise. And then if you're doing the DBE certification, you would submit a tax return there.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Aurelio, if you want to ask your question. I don't know if the hand was left raised from the last time.
Question is, besides the EVP, you mentioned that there are a list of small jobs that can be applied for us to gain experience. Where those jobs are listed?
Those jobs are not advertised, so there isn't a listing per se in any one spot for them. That the reason why we're advising that you be registered in EVP is because that is where the different procurement specialists, the folks who actually go out to award a contract, to seek a vendor to do that. That's where they're going to look to see. So if they look for painting, right, they want to see that your information is there, your contact information is accurate and is current. So that is what they will use to do that.
And where can I get a list of these small jobs? I'm sorry to ask you again.
There isn't a list. They are not advertised, so there
Okay.
not a list in any one place.
It would require more direct contact with the procurement organizations within the agencies.
Yes, that's another reason why it's always good to, again, those vendor liaison, that's their role, right? Is to, one, share information with you with regard to what specifically their agency has available or upcoming if they have that information. And also an opportunity for you to make sure you keep in front of them, your what you want to offer to the state, what good and or service that you would like to offer, your availability, and make sure they have your contact information. And to give you networking, to give you an opportunity maybe to get in front of some end users that's within the agency. So, purchasing is performing a service for a department within the agency. So we are not, if we buy trucks, we are not going to be the people who use the trucks, right? We're going to buy for different divisions. So who are the people in the division? Who are the people in the business unit that will actually be working specific? Once we award the contract, then purchasing is out of the process altogether. Then it will be between the awarded vendor and the what we call the end user, or the person who's going to actually use the product, right? And so there are opportunities, and also agencies through their vendor liaison, they also do different programs in which you get an opportunity to learn more about how that specific agency do business, or what they're offering, or the different departments, what they do. So what their need is based on what they do, how they make decisions, and things of that nature. So it's really good to be in contact with the agency, with the purchasing office within each of the agencies, because there's a vast amount of information that can be shared with you, and knowledge and information that can go really both ways, right? From us to you, and from you to the agency.
But
All right.
I'm sorry, but where do I get this, there's a website I can go? I have to go site by
No,
site?
so you have to, yes, you will have to, unless Carla, you guys in the hub office have a listing. I don't know of any one place that I will go to each agency purchasing department, and you will be able to get a name and contact that way.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
No other hands raised, Joni. We can move forward.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So we'll shift here, and we're going to talk about the hub program, the hub efforts, and the certification. And since, obviously, I'm here as a guest of the hub office, so those are the experts. And so we're going to continue to lean on them for their expertise in this area. I like to give them props for the work that they do, and that they do very well. So Hub obviously is historically underutilized businesses, and there's an executive order that govern and general statute that speaks specifically to that. There is a 10% Hub goal, both construction spending and goods and services, that each agency is working towards. They encourage and promote the use of hub vendors in an effort to exceed this 10%, but at a minimum needed, right? The hubs are identified in e-procurement, which is our Ariba system, right? That's the electronic procurement that we are using, which is also the EVP. Then, of course, we have the hub certification program, the application itself, and recertification that's now being processed through the EVP. So what are the hub efforts that, agencies, I just have DOT here because, again, that is who I work for. So we've added like hub language to all of our solicitations, ability to self-identify as a hub, and project upcoming opportunities. We share as much as possible our upcoming procurement plan with both the Division of Purchase and Contracts as well as the Hub office. Again, I spoke about the Hub liaison that we have, most agencies have within their procurement departments. And then the notice of opportunities, not only are they posted, but we also, which also notifies, which is also posted on the Hub website as well. Here at NCDOT, we also notify our Office of Civil Rights because again, they have access and contact with different minority vendors as well. A hub plan, just to kind of give you an idea of what, something like that would look like. This is specific to NCDOT. So for our small purchase dollar amounts, which is anything that's 29,000 or less, again, we authorize the P card to be used. And exercise efforts should be us to seek a hub vendor even in that category. And I think there's a lot of work that can be done. And we are trying to do that work. That's the reason why it's important that that your information is current and accurate. For our open market, now range of 29,001 cents up to $50,000. Those are our open market purchases. Anything over 29,000, really. We have a minimum of 3 quotes, and because the vendor has to also agree to terms and conditions, and we do stipulate here at NCDOT that at least one of the quotes be submitted from a hub vendor. That is a requirement, right? I mean, that they seek that. But if they're unable to get a response from a hub vendor, then we must move forward with the procurement because it's needed, right? So I ask that you, when you are registering or if you have registered, go back and make sure that you've only identified those goods and services that you truly can provide, that you're able to provide. Because if one of my staff members go into EVP and look, and your registration has every commodity code listed, checked, then we really don't know what you could do. It is highly unlikely that you can do everything. And I know a lot of people think that, they want to do that because they want to get the information. Well, you're going to be bombarded with emails, one, and I think it makes it even hard to manage and find and see that one thing, that two thing, that three thing that you really can do, because you're going to get everything that's out there. And I don't advise that. To be perfectly honest with you, if I saw a vendor that has checked every box, then I'm not going to contact them because I don't really know what you can do. And so I'm going to move to one that has only checked, 2, 3 things, maybe, depending upon what it is, because that's more likely to be the truth, right? Accurate, and something that would provide a good product or service that would not put the agency at risk by doing business with that vendor. And then we have the range over $50,000, which obviously is formal and is advertised. And again, we always seek to solicit at least one hub response in all of our procurements, actually. The hub certification process, there's the link for that. Just, register on the EVP, you complete the appropriate application, and you provide the required documents. And the vendor must recertify every 4 years. So keep that in mind as well. There are 3 possible applications. You choose the appropriate one and only fill that one out, right? And then we have the reciprocity certification options that are listed there on the screen as well. The required documents, I think someone asked about that earlier. For all applicants, you see here what they are. Again, you're going to get the presentation. So work experience, resumes, a proof of citizenship or permanent residency, copies of professional licenses, if that's appropriate or required, and what you're being, what you placed on your application. And then additionally, the list of any equipment, Lisa own that you have. 2 letters of reference, proof for disability as applicable. So all this information again will be provided for you. Business structure, required documents. So you will, if your business is a corporation, those things that are listed, those items that are listed under corporation, those are items that you must provide, the documentation that you must provide. And you got the different business structures there, limited liability, partnerships, and franchises there as well. Are there any questions?
We do have hand raised. Donald Lash, if you want to ask your question.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Good morning. Yes,
Yes.
good morning.
Hey, so I'm set up with Hub. There's a couple of opportunities that's gonna come up. I'm just want to prepare for them, and I know it's supposed to be to inform you on the purchasing, as well as like, do y'all give the leeway to see who had it before? Like, do you go through the procurement department of that county, or how
Yes,
does that
so
go?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So yes, there is a process called public records requests. And so that is also always a great way to, if you want to see who had the contract, who have it currently or who had it previously. The contract is not currently in use, but you can send a public records request and ask for that documentation, and it would be sent to you,
Okay.
emailed to
Well,
you.
and that way you can kind of base your bid before placing off of like previous, and you can know whether you can up it or just based off of
Well,
the
you have to
economy.
make a business decision with regard to that. So, just because it was awarded at a certain level at one time in history doesn't necessarily mean that that would be, that would be the standard for the current bid. So, that's a business decision. It will certainly give you some idea of what was what won, right? What was awarded.
What was
So
awarded, correct?
right. So it can give you valuable information into if you're not quite sure on how to complete a solicitation document or what to include in one, or uh, most of the low cost meat spec ones, we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute, but those are pretty cut and dry, right? You can provide it, who's gonna offer it to the state at the lowest price. You're talking a little different conversation when we get into solicitations that are evaluated, because more than one factor, more than price matters. And so and I would say those are really important as well, to get a copy of those awarded contracts so that you can see. And we use the word contract and solicitation document interchangeably with the state. And I know outside of the state, they are two very different things. But with the state, if someone says, I have a contract here, they're probably talking about a signed solicitation document. So we use our solicitation document as our contract. So it would be great to do a public records request of the agency that is that you're interested in, and get the last awarded contract documents that's associated with that, and take a look at that and see. You can ask for the awarded contract, and you can ask for all submitted contracts, right? So it depending upon whether you think that you can get some use out seeing, okay, what vendors submitted but was not awarded, or are you only interested in seeing the awarded vendor? So that's if the contract was awarded, with the exception of confidential information, pricing is never that, then it is subject to public records request.
Gotcha.
Okay.
That was my
Sorry.
end. Look, go ahead. Thank you for answering my question.
You're welcome.
Like that quiet.
All right, Jennifer Davis.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I recently received my hub certification, and we are looking to work with the DOT, but I'm realizing as the more I look at bidding and letting, that really the hub certification, if I may be misunderstanding this, but the hub certification really doesn't correlate with the DOT. With the DOT, you have to be DBE certified. So I was just wondering on this previous slide with the hub and the DOT, how they interact at all.
So those are two different programs, the DBE and the hub, and so the requirements of them are different. And how they are utilized within NCDOT is different as well, can be different as well. So if you are, just as Shay was stated earlier, your question is more around on the DBE side, then we need to take that offline because that's really different than what we're talking about this morning.
Well, I guess I was trying to understand on that slide you showed for DOT and hub, how hub interacts with DOT at all, I guess is what I'm trying to understand.
Okay, so for goods and services, we still have the same, DOT has the same hub aspiration of 10% just as any other agency or community college. And so we do purchase goods and services from vendors that are not DBE. DBE is more related to the construction side of the house. And we do other things that are not by law construction. So that's, I hope I answered your question. I'm not real sure what you're asking me.
I think that answers it because we're more the construction side. So
Right.
it sounds like I just need to get the DBE to work with the DOT for that side.
Yes. So Shay will be able to or I can get you in contact with the DBE folks that handle the DBE for DOT.
Yeah,
Okay.
either way, Joni works. I can certainly provide my information. And so,
Yeah, do that, Shay. Go ahead. That's
Okay.
fine. Thank you.
And
Okay. All right.
we do have a link to the DBE certification in the chat. And also, I will copy the chat and include it in our communication when we send out the presentation, along with Shay's contact.
Thank you. I
Okay.
appreciate it.
Okay. And I know sometimes this whole certification thing can get a little confusing, but just kind of think of it from the standpoint, there are different buckets of money that come down. And based on that, there are going to be different opportunities that are associated. So, Joni's organization has a certain type of projects that they're managing. The DBE certification, when you are in that world, then the opportunities, that it's a different set of opportunities. There are different systems that are going to help drive the information to you in terms of what those opportunities are. So construction does go, of course, across DOT. There are a lot of construction opportunities under hub as well, just not specifically with DOT, if that makes sense on the hub side. So lots of things that are there, but we'll help you kind of navigate through that process. Thank you so much, Joni.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you for the
we will
question.
move forward, Joni. If your hands are still raised, we will come back to it at the end of this module.
Thank you, Colin. And thank you, Shay. So in this section, we're going to discuss types of solicitation documents, the solicitation content, and we're going to talk about requirements versus evaluation criteria. So for the solicitation planning, the required information that is provided to purchasing to my department by the end user is really, they got to identify the need and define what they want, right? We are not the subject matter experts. They are, so they have to give that information to us. They have to gather it together, develop the specification and scope of work as appropriate. And then purchasing gets involved. Obviously, we're going to review and authorize the documents and processes that will be used. We're going to prepare the solicitation document and either post it or send directly to the vendor. But I think it's important to know from this slide is that purchasing part is mainly the management of the accurate development of the solicitation. The information that's in it is true and it's accurate, and it is not so binding that it does not offer competition when appropriate, right? We do have situations, we talked about the conditions in which you can waive competition, but generally competition is the cornerstone of government purchasing. So we want to make sure that those waivers are not common and they are not just arbitrarily given. For NCDOT to waive competition requires my approval. So I have not delegated that to anyone else. I want to know specifically those instances in which we are not going to see competition, and I need to be convinced that it makes sense from a business perspective. Purchasing is also going to do the management of the actual bid solicitation process itself. And we also manage the award process, which is both the evaluation piece of that as well as the recommendation piece of that. Vendor direct quotes, which is a EVP tool. This for goods or services up to the $29,000 delegation amount. The buyer, the person in procurement, is able to select from a list of registered vendors, right, and send these quotes directly to them. The IRQ, which is obviously the informal request, the quote is for goods or services again, and this is for purchases up to $50,000. Right. And the buyer is able to purchase in person. The buyer is able to select from a list of registered vendors. It will be sent directly to them. And in this case, the vendor will be agreeing. We're going to use our solicitation documents. So the vendor will be agreeing to the North Carolina terms and conditions. For the request for quotes, the RFQ, it's a solicit document that's used for non-advertised requirements, right? So if we're not going to post it, we're going to send it directly to the vendor. Then it is, and we need the vendor to agree to our terms and conditions. Then you will receive a RFQ. It's when we are seeking competition, but it doesn't reach the level of a formal bid. But we do, again, want to seek competition. The responses are open once we get the email back from you. And which is the difference between if a bid is posted, then the date and time of when the bid opening would occur is also posted at the same time. So the information is out there. If we get a bid in for something that's posted, we will not open it until the date and time that's been publicized for that. This is different because this is an RFQ. We're going to open it once we receive it. We send it to you today. You give it back to us this afternoon. We're going to open it this afternoon, right? We're going to look at it. We're going to make a decision about it. And we're not waiting for a particular date and time. IFB, this is an invitation for bid, and this is when we know we have well-defined goods and simple services that we're looking for. It's typically used for purchases that's under $50,000, could be over, but typically it's under, and it's most commonly used for what we call low cost meet spec, which is the lowest responsive bid meeting the specification requirements. It is posted, so it is a competitive bid, right? It is solicited, it is advertised, and it is posted for a minimum of 10 days. And there will be a public bid opening, and there potentially could be a site visit, and we'll talk a little bit about what a site visit is in a moment. RFP, a request for proposal. This is a more involved document, I would say. It is for more complex services or a combination of goods and services, and it's typically well over $50,000. When we use this, is when we know the end result we want, but we want some input from the vendor on the best solution or the best way to get to that, right? And evaluation method is used, something other than low cost to meet specifications. So again, we're gonna have some evaluation criteria. We're gonna state up front what those are, and that is how your submission, your RFP submission will be evaluated. Again, it's posted for a minimum of 10 days. It will be a public bid opening, and it could potentially also have a site visit associated with it as well. RFI, that's a request for information. It is simply for the sole purpose of gathering information. It is ascertaining whether we have a level of interest out there in potential vendors. It is not a solicitation document. No award will come out of the RFI. It is a real simple document. Basically, state terms and conditions are not required, so they are not even attached to the document at all. And once the response period is over, it's canceled in IPS. So there will be no award. We're simply doing what it says. We're requesting information to help us, and we use that information to help us to make a decision around the level of what is the market saying about this particular good or services, right, that we're looking at. And based on that, do we want to do a competitive process? Does it make sense to do one? What kind of money what is the potential cost of this particular item or service? And so again, we gather information so that we can make a decision on how or if to move forward. The solicitation document has several different sections to it. You will see this is specifically what they are. In section 1, it's a purpose and background, and that's where the agencies can tell you why they're making this purchase, give you probably some historical data in terms of when they've used it in the past, or why it's needed, that sort of thing. In section 2, that's where you can get some real general information. You're going to see the solicitation schedule, if the question period, when that is, what you need to return with your bid, how many copies, if it's a mail-in bid. Obviously, if it's electronic one, copies are not applicable. In section 3, which is the method of award and the bid evaluation process, we're going to tell you how we are going to award it, whether it's going to be lowest cost meeting specification, or whether it would be an evaluation process, which is also known as best value. If confidentiality information is also in that section, and again, not only we're going to tell you what method of award we're going to use, if it's going to be an evaluation, we're going to provide the evaluation criteria in that section as well. Section 4 talks about is where you find your requirements, right? That's where it could be anywhere from the contract terms, delivery information, warranty, if there's any references that are required, any vendor experience that is required, if there's any certifications or licensures that are needed for that particular procurement, if we're going to do any background checks, all those types of information that will be found in section 4. In section 5, you will see scope of work, or product specifications, like what are the specifics they would need, what's the objective, if there's any deviations allowed, and if so, what they are, if there's any type of safety requirements, if there's a technical approach that we want to receive from the vendor, then it'll be in there as well, a project organization. In section 6 is more about contract administration. We're going to ask you for who your project manager is going to be, mainly your main point of contact for us. We, at the point of award, we will give you that information for the agency side, because once a solicitation is posted, and until between the time it's posted and until it is awarded, your point of contact is the procurement person that is identified by name and email address and phone number on each posted solicitation. So at the point after it has been awarded, that point of contact will change to the end user. We will provide contact information for that, obviously. And then if there's any reports that are required, that information will be in that section as well. Any contract changes, how they will be handled, who's authorized to do those. And that is the procurement office, actually. And then you have attachments where you will have your pricing form that you will complete, instructions to the vendors. That's where you will see the North Carolina terms and conditions, and several other financial conditions. There are several other attachments that are there, and the solicitation will tell you what is required. So documents of change. This is once we have posted solicitation, if there's any changes to be made to that solicitation before the opening date, right, then we're gonna note those changes on what we call an addendum. So I would strongly advise you that if you are going to respond, and I hope that you will, to bid posted bids, that you continue to go back and check this site, check that posting for any associated addendum. It'll be listed right under the posting, so it's not all over the place. Where you found the posting, it's going to be right below it if there's an addendum. Addendum, again, is that document that changes something that's in the posted solicitation. For instance, if I had posted a bid 10 days ago that I want to, that I'm going to open tomorrow, right? For whatever reason, there are several business reasons why I will want to give additional time. Then I will post an addendum that says that the bid opening date has been changed from 10/17 to the new date, right? So that's an addendum. That is the notification of a change in what was posted. So please make sure you go back and keep an eye on the bid posting that you are going to respond to make sure that, if there isn't an addendum, you understand what that change is, and see if that makes a difference in how you want to respond to your response to be for that bid. Request for clarification, that is sent to a vendor after the bid has opened publicly. So once we get your bid, the published opening date and time has passed. We are reviewing your bid. We have a question, right? Then we're going to send you what we call a request for clarification. It's not an opportunity to change your bid. It is the opportunity you to confirm for us that this is how we are reading this. Is this true or not? There's usually a yes or no, right? Best and final offer, that is a negotiation tool. So obviously that is after the bid has opened, the bid responses have been reviewed, evaluated, and we decide that, let's say we had 5 responses, and they were evaluated, and we decided to the top 3 responses with the highest evaluations, we want to do a best and final offer. Then we will contact them, right? We won't go into negotiations. We may invite them in to, or, nowadays everything is done virtually. So schedule a meeting, we would say specifically what about their submission that we want to ask questions about, we want to get additional information about. And we will not tell you who else we are doing a negotiation with. No, we won't tell them about you, and we won't tell you about them. So we're not required to go into negotiations, so you should always give your best offer, your most competitive offer at the time that you submit your bid, because we're not required to go into evaluation. We simply can award based on what's submitted. But in our larger procurements, more specifically the RFPs, the requests for proposals, we do have instances in which we do go into negotiations. And so if we call you in, we have a meeting, we sit down, we talk, you give us some information, we share some information with you. The way that the state documents those agreed upon changes, right? Because you submitted a bids proposal. We had a meeting to talk about something that was in your bid submission, to either get something additional, change something. How the state documents and make it contractually binding on both the state and the vendor is by this best and final offer. So we're going to send you, after the negotiation meeting, we're going to send you this document that's called best and final offer. It's a really small document. It's not another, 30-page, 70-page document. It's not. Typically it's less than 5, right? And in that, you'll complete it, sign it, and send it back. We will sign it on the state side. That makes it contractually binding along with your bid submission. So that's how we get that into the contract. That discussion, those agreements that happen after you submitted your bid, we do that by the best and final offer. Once we have agreed and we award the contract, if we need to make any changes after award, those are contract amendments. And so that is done that way. This is an example of you're submitting your bid or your proposal. Please make sure you read the entire solicitation carefully. Pay attention to words like shall, must, and mandatory. Please know that your signature is required and you are stating that you understand and agree to what's in that document. And so it's really important. There are the only time that I know of in which if you do not, because if you don't sign your submission, then it's not a legal offer to the state. The only exception that I've ever heard in my career, and I've done this for over 30 years, right? Not with the state, but in a combination of both public and private work, is that in the cases of requests for proposals, we also ask that the vendor submit, I'm gonna call it introduction letter, but it's in which you will talk about what you want to offer the state. You will talk about you accept the terms, or and you will also state that, you're making an offer, you want to be awarded, blah, blah, blah. You sign that letter, right? You sign that letter. It has been legally determined in the past that signature is a legal binding offer. And so if you fail to sign the RFP, then we have that signature. And so we can make it. That is the only time that I know of. Any other time that you have not signed that solicitation document, it is not a legal binding offer. We're not even going to look at it. We're going to set it aside because you haven't, is nothing we can do with it. So please make sure you sign it. It's very important. The schedule, you will see this little box in any solicitation that's posted. It's going to give you, obviously, the issue. Solicitation is the state. Then we'll tell you the date, obviously, that we posted the solicitation. If there's going to be a pre-bid meeting or a site visit, the information is listed there. If when written questions are required to be submitted, that date and time is listed there, and et cetera, all the way down. The only thing that I would say with regard to this is that the contract award date, and obviously as a result of that, the contract effective date, those are best guesses on the state side, because obviously if we, this information is posted when the solicitation is posted. So our intent is to have it awarded by a certain day. Now, if we get into evaluating the proposals, if it's, proposal is evaluated something other than low cost meets spec, then it may take a little bit more time. If we get into negotiations with you, then obviously that's going to take some more time. So though the last two dates are best effort dates, and many times you won't even see those on there because, again, those are best effort dates. All the other dates are firm unless they are changed by an addendum. Remember, we said addendum is how you change something that's already posted. Then the questions, that is the opportunity that you see a posted bid, you have some questions around it. You need to provide those questions in writing to the purchasing staff that's listed on solicitation as the point of contact. So remember, from the time that it's posted and to the time it's awarded, your only contact about that particular solicitation should be with the procurement staff member that's listed on the document. You should submit your question in writing. That makes it binding, because what they're going to do is all the written questions. If I had a solicitation posted, and today I said that submitted questions are due October the 16th by 2 p.m. If I posted it on October the 1st, if you sent me a question on October the 1st, I'm just going to take your question, hold it, right? And all the questions that come in up until 2 o'clock today, and I'm going to take all those questions, I'm going to put them on a graph or a chart, really, right? Listing all the questions, the question on one side, the answer on the other, depending upon what the question is. If it's specific to what we're trying to buy, then, and it requires a subject matter expert to answer it, then I'm going to send a question to the end user and say, hey, give me the answer to this question, right? If it's a procurement question, then I'm going to answer the question. Once I get, if I have to send it to the end user, once I get those responses back, add whatever responses I have, I'm going to be question answer all the way down to all the questions are listed, all the answers are listed. I'm going to take that chart and put it in an addendum and post it. So everyone gets the same answer, get all the questions, all the answers at the same time. That's how that happens. That addendum is a legal document, and it holds the state, binds the state to the response on that document. So we're going to talk about I'll wait. I'm going to go to my next slide. So site visits. Again, these are opportunities when we may think that the vendor is advantageous for them to need to physically see the location or gather additional information to be able to provide us a responsible proposal, right? Or a responsible bid that they can actually live with. So again, site visits may be two categories. It's either going to be mandatory or it's urged and cautioned. If it's mandatory, either way, a specific date, time, or location will be in the solicitation document, right? If it's mandatory, the vendor must sign in and sign out at time of arrival. If you are late, you can attend. We're not going to argue about whether you're late or not, but you will not be able to sign in, because at the time that it starts, we're going to take up the sign-in sheet. If you are not listed on that sign-in sheet, you are late, and your bid would not be accepted. So you can send it in, but if it's mandatory and you did not attend the site visit, or you were late getting there, then we are not going to open your bid because you did not meet the requirements. Okay, that's just factual. Urge and caution means we think you ought to come, but you can make your own best judgment about that. Again, we're going to give you a specific date, time, and location. We're going to ask you to sign in because we want a record of who was there for our own documents, right? Late vendors, you can sign in when you get there. Again, it's urge and caution. You don't have to come. So whenever you get there, it's fine. We obviously think you ought to be there at the beginning because we think it's important enough that we're going to hold it, but it is urged and cautioned, but you don't have to attend. Attendance is not a requirement. We will accept all bid responses that come in for those, right? And we will review and open and review those, right? Now let's go back to whether it's mandatory or urgent caution. If you're at a site visit, and obviously there's a representative for NCDOT in my case that's there, right? Most likely, it may be someone from my staff purchasing, but if we're there, we also have someone from the division or the business unit that is commissioning the good and or service, right? So they are the subject matter experts. So they're there as well. So you asked a question, then we're going to give you an answer there, right? But in order to make it binding, you need to also submit that question in writing during the written question period. Because again, what all the questions and all the responses are makes the state binding the state to that response. So it's fine to converse at a site visit or, at a location, but understand whatever response that person gives you, it is not legally binding on the state unless you send your question in writing, right? I get you answer your question, I got my answer. But if you want to make sure that we have to do what we said, send us that question in writing. We have to respond to it, and we'll publish the response that makes us obligated to that, right? So it's important. Please ask all the questions you can. That's why you're there. But also remember, to make it binding, you must send it in writing, even though you just asked it verbally. All right. The middle instructions, they're really important. Please pay attention to that. Obviously, they are, there are different ways, by mail, email, for those informal ones, and obviously outsourcing too. So please pay attention to submittal instructions. Vendor requirements, these are the specifications that a vendor must meet or submit with its proposal. So pay attention to that. And requirements are yes or no, and they're not evaluated. Either you have it or you can do it or you cannot. For an example of that is delivery, as we got here. Delivery of product within 15, we're going to say that we need the product delivered within 15 consecutive calendar days. We're going to have a space there beside the requirement for you to tell us how many days you can deliver it. If we say we need it in 15 and you say you can deliver it in 20, then you're not meeting the specification, the requirement. So your bid is not responsive because you can't meet it, right? 15 and less, we're good in terms of that delivery piece, right? You're responsive and you're going to have it. So pay attention to vendor requirements. They are important. Evaluations, this is the how that the vendor plans to complete the project and what the state will be evaluating. We got some possible criteria that's shown here. Like we may look at vendor experience, staffing plan, if that's appropriate for, the proposal, your technical approach, how you plan to meet the state's requirements. So those are some examples of what we evaluate. Are there any questions?
We do not have questions in the chat. We will take the hands that were raised. Michelle, if you want to unmute and ask your question.
Good morning. Sorry, I'm a little under the weather, so my voice is kind of very scratchy. I apologize in advance. My question is regarding the EVP portal and making sure that the services that I offer, I really can't find a category for one of the things that I do, and I wasn't sure the best way to make sure I'm noticed if my type of services are being sought.
You can't find a commodity that is, that's what you, I'm sorry, is what that.
So one of the services that I offer is Spanish translation and interpretation, and I can't find anything that falls or that is specific to Spanish language.
So may I give a suggestion on that one? Um,
Please.
Sometimes what you have to do, because every single category of business, product, or service is not necessarily going to be there to that detail level. So you're going to need to periodically go in and do keyword searches into the EVP system and look for any types of solicitations that have any translation related services in there. Sometimes you have to back into that. In terms of kind of figuring out what a commodity code would be that should be on your profile. But that also is where the whole process of really kind of figuring out that discovery process of determining based on what your business actually does, then what are the organizations that are most likely to use those services. And that's really where you kind of put together your plan then, to get more notice from those particular ones based on what it is that they're soliciting at different points in time.
Thank you.
So my thing is I already have my hub license and I have been working on getting my interprofessional license with Duke. And my question is, if I am looking to contract with the state for my trademark for service, what do I need to do? Because I want to get my procurement done through the governor in response to my service. So how can I set up the consultation or the solicitation with the governor? What process? What do I need to do?
I would suggest you contact his office if you want to work specifically with him.
Okay, so so if I get would it be easier for you to do that if I get my SBE or if I can just do it through the hub license itself?
Well,
the hub licenses, Shay, you may want to jump in there, but the hub license itself is not going to get you in front of the governor. If that's what you're asking.
So yes. So what I want to do is be able to get the procurement done. Because I have a solicitation bond and everything already submitted in with the charitable solicitation department.
So it sounds like you're just going to follow the solicitation process. If you've already submitted there, and as Joni said, there's nothing specific to a certification that is going to, somehow give you some additional privilege in that process. So you'll just have to follow whatever is governed there. The schedule is there for the different pieces of it. Hopefully I'm not quite sure that I fully understand your question, but does that help answer your question?
Well, my thing is, how can you set up the appointment to get the consultation for the process?
Consultation for what process?
Right.
The procurement process to be able to get the service trademark to contract with the state.
So you don't.
I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with the service trademark that you're referring to.
Yeah. What?
Sounds very specific.
So for my hub, I did a HUD project. Okay, and I already did a proposal within the college or university. So my thing is the overall project with getting it, the procurement for the contract with the state. What is the process of being able to set up the appointment?
So let me ask you, did you, a university or agency, they solicited, so they put out a need, they're looking for a vendor, what you're offering, did that happen? And you responded to a opportunity?
So I've already got went through all that stuff because
So they're
project
in the
is reviewed.
review project. They're in the review portion of that, and you have not heard anything back, and you are trying to get some information, or they have awarded. I'm confused. So if you have already
So I
submitted
haven't
a
been awarded
response,
anything.
so you submitted a
What are you saying?
response to you submitted a response to a published need. You said you've
I'm in the
already
process.
submitted.
So I have all my licenses in the project in process for the service, but I'm trying to get the trademark, the SBE and the trademark procured for the service.
All I can tell you at this point, I mean, I'm happy to talk with you offline, but that almost sounds like it's something specific to that solicitation. And so the contract, whoever the point of contact is, sounds like the person that you would need to talk to on it.
I would agree.
And I also go through the General Assembly to get that process started.
Again, I need to get clarity when you talk about the process. So let's talk yours offline because it's very specific to your situation, it sounds like, and not relevant for everybody. So my contact information, I can provide it. Carla will have it when she sends out notes as well. And let's see if we can get your questions answered.
Okay, what's your number?
I'm putting it into the, are you in the chat? Can you see the chat?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'm putting it in now. Okay. All right. Thank you again for your question. And thank you, Joni.
Thank you, Shay.
All right.
Tamara, if you want to ask your question.
Sure. Great morning.
Good morning.
When you were speaking about open market purchases and the requirement for organizations to solicit a request from at least one hub vendor, is this an expectation also for any of our educational entities across the state? And if so, how has that been communicated to them?
This is not specific to them, so I don't know that they have that requirement.
Okay. Thank you.
One last question from Cabria.
Hi, yes. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for this wonderful presentation. Pardon my tardiness. I am in the trucking transportation business, so I missed the part. How do I log on to look and review current solicitations for business needs or needs that are trying to be filled? How do I research that?
Are you registered with EVP?
I think so. I just did a bunch of certifications. I don't know how they all interchange, like with the hub and the NCSBE and so on. But yes, I think so. So when you guys are talking about, the next steps to the solicitation, mandatory sites and so on, what are the steps to get there or before that?
So that's pertaining to a posted solicitation, right? And in that posted solicitation, it would say whether or not there was a site visit, and it will also say whether or not it's urged and cautioned or it's mandatory, right? So you need to go if you're in EVP, so I think that's the first thing we need to establish is if you're in there, then you registered, you identify what good and or service that you like to provide to the state by commodity code, then you should be getting communications when those commodity codes items are posted.
That's my question. Okay. Carla has been wonderful. So I can plan to reach out to her online to confirm that information. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Joni, we can move on to our next module.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So in this section, we're going to talk about direct submittal, EVP collaborative system, and the solicitation search and response. Just some basic high-level information about the submission process. How do I submit my proposal? So there are different ways or options to submit your proposal or your bid submission. And so it's really important to pay attention to the solicitation itself. It will tell you how you should submit your proposal or your submission, how you should do that. So it's either, these are ways in which it can be done. Direct submittal over email. Those are typically they are for our informal bids. And so, those are the categories that's there on the screen and which fits under that category. We could do it through the EVP collaborative tool, which is within our e-procurement or our Ariba system. Or we can do, it can be posted in EVP, and they can require that you mail in your response, or you can electronically submit your response through the tool itself. So it's important that you pay attention to the language that's in the document that tell you how to submit your proposal. So the collaborative space is the informal quoting and pricing request function that's within our EVP system. We can use it to obtain quotes for goods and services from multiple vendors at the same time. The vendors agreeing, because it's our document, the terms and conditions are attached, and so the vendor are agreeing to that. And it's typically used for purchases up to $50,000. You also can do a search and response. It's used to post formal, whether it's an IFB or RFP solicitations. It allows the agencies to advertise, obviously, for our goods and services that we're seeking, to have an open and fair competition process. And we will also post our bid tabulation, our pricing there once the bid is open. We will also post that notice of award once the bid has been awarded. What it would allow you to be able to do is, again, market it provides a market for the goods and services that the state is looking for, and you an opportunity to market your goods and services to the state. It's a free registration, and you will be able to view the tabulation and the award information there. This is a snapshot of the vendor portal. To your left, search and response solicitation. There's obviously a button there for that. At the top, you see where you would sign in with your existing EVP login if you've already logged in, or if you need to register, there's also a button for that as well. I want you to understand that EVP will publicly display all the solicitation posted without requiring the login access. So you still can see that whether you have a login access or not. But in order for you to respond to the posting, you will need to be registered in EVP, right? So you can see it whether you're registered or not. But in order to respond to the posting in EVP, you must be obviously registered there. This is another example of solicitation page here, and just kind of the different categories and what that looks like. This is another example. It's specific to NCDOT and or this page is because this is what we buy, aggregate ABC rocks, right? Is really what that is. So you would click here to respond to the solicitation and gain access to the sourcing tool event so that you will be able to see the requirements and make up your response. This is another sample of the sourcing event page. You see at the top right that there's a countdown clock that indicates the time that's remaining for the bids to be accepted, right? So it's going to count down, and when the bid opening time arrive, it will not accept any bids after that. You can click on review prerequisite just to continue the process of submitting your bid. And then there's also to the left there a checklist of steps to take and content section that you'll be able to see everything that's associated to that event. Are there any questions?
In the interest of time, Joni, we are going to proceed through the next couple of modules and take questions in the end.
Sounds good.
So we can move forward.
All right. So in this section, and we're almost done. In this section, we're going to cover the evaluation process. We're going to talk about specifically bid openings, evaluation methods, the reference checks, what EEO 50 is, and clarification. And Baffles talked a little bit about that, so we won't have to spend a lot of time again on that. The bid and proposal opening, that's a part of the formal bid process. Obviously, there will be a publicly opened, there will be a date, time, and location that's specified in solicitation. Late bids and proposals are not accepted. Attendance is taken at the bid opening. We want to know who's in the room for our own documentation reasons. Again, the vendor should only contact the purchasing agent or specialist that's listed on the solicitation document from the time the bid is posted until it's awarded. You also can go to EVP to see the tabulations that's posted there, which is the name of the vendors as well as the pricing, as long as we don't anticipate any negotiation. The pricing will be posted as well. The different evaluation methods is lowest cost meet specification. That's probably the most commonly known one. This is where it meets all the requirements solicitation, and we simply going to award to the lowest offer, right? And then we have best value, which is two ways it can be done: the weighted method or the narrative method. The weights add up to 100. There'll be different components that have different weights, but the weights will add up to 100, and the components would be those criteria that will be evaluated, right? We talked about technical, costs, references, experience, any of those type of things. Or it could be evaluated in what is called the narrative method, which is really a written account of the merit of a proposal, using categories such as strengths and weaknesses. And a strength would be, that thing that makes the potential success or contribute towards exceeding the requirements, right? What is really good about this? And if it's identified as a weakness, that's really identifying something that we see as a flaw that would increase the risk of the contract performance being unsuccessful. So those are the different types of evaluations methods. The last two are referred to as best value, just depending upon whether they want to do weights or the narrative format. Reference checks. These are just that. Reference checks is used to confirm the vendor has the perform the service or offer the products in the same size and scope. We're looking at the reference sections can be added to a solicitation. It may or may not be there. It's not a required section that we have to have in there. We make a decision before we post the bid as to whether we're going to require references or not. We can put it in there, but again, pay attention to the word shall or may, right? It could be a requirement if it says shall, you need to make sure you put it in there. And then we will check. So we either gonna check them all or check none. So we're not gonna, do one vendor response one way and another vendor response, a different way. We're either gonna check all references or we're gonna check no references. So make sure that you pay attention again to the language that's there. Clarification and baffles, I talked about that previously. Request for clarification, again, that is after the bid has been opened. We have a question about your submission, is usually a yes or no clarification. Best and final offer, that's really part of the negotiation stage of the evaluation process. And we can do it in a number of ways. It can alter, while the clarification cannot alter the vendor's response, a best and final offer obviously it can, because we're going into negotiations. Please remember that the state doesn't have to negotiate with all vendors. So you are, it's in your best interest to make sure you give your best offer with your initial submission. Price match, which is Executive Order 50, that is an opportunity for price matching for North Carolina vendor. That's a vendor that's headquartered in North Carolina. You must indicate whether you want to participate, and this is just for goods, right? You must indicate when you put in your submission, when you make your bid, you must indicate whether you want to participate in price matching or not. The vendor has to complete the attachment. There is a for all goods solicitations, there is a Executive Order 50 that's attached to that. You must complete that. In order for you to get the opportunity to price match, your price must be within 5% or $10,000 of the non-resident vendor, right? In order for us to offer that to you. So that is what price matching is, and it's the opportunity. Remember, you can't ask for it after the fact. You must ask for it at the time that you make your bid submission. In the interest of time, I'm going to hold the questions as Carla suggested, and I'm going to move into our final section, next to our last section. In this section, we're going to talk about award notifications, purchase order, enforcing. With the award notification, the purchasing agency office is going to send the certification of award memo to the vendor that has been awarded to. It's going to be attached to the purchase order, and it will be posted. The goal is to post it in EVP within 3 days of the final approvals. And once the award is received, then the vendor may contact the contract administrator. So the end user at that point, purchasing is out of the process. And then the communication will be between the awarded vendor and the division or business unit that's going to actually use that good and or service. For purchase orders, there's information that's included in these things that are listed here, but are not just limited to that. More commonly is the description of the items or the service that's being bought. Obviously, pricing is there. The delivery schedule is included, payment terms and conditions, and if there are comments to the vendor. On the invoicing side of the house, this is it include the following item description, or the service is usually there. The purchase order of the contract. Please remember that also the contract number and the purchase order number are sometimes the same number. And so that's just something to think about. Make sure your remit to address is current in EVP. Typically, the state pays net 30. There can be some exceptions to that, but typically that's what it is. For NCDOT, checks are written on Tuesdays and Thursday. We do electronic payments as well. So that's available. Question. Our last section, we're going to talk about contract management, inspections and testing, renewals and amendments, vendor protests, and public records requests. Talked a little bit about some of that. So the contract kickoff meeting is really, again, we have awarded the contract. You, the awarded vendor, is going to meet with the end user for the first time, because remember, from the time that the bid is submitted until it is awarded, your contact is with the purchasing office. Once we have awarded the contract, you would then work with the end user. And so that's an opportunity for you to meet. You in that meeting, some of the things you do is clarify the terms and conditions, make sure everybody have the same understanding, the goals and objectives, communicate roles and responsibilities. Just again, make sure everyone's on the same page. That's what happened in the initial kickoff meeting. Inspection and testing. The state will let the vendor know if we receive damaged goods, obviously, or if the order is inadequate or we don't have it. We're going to contact and say, hey, where is it? What's going on? Quality acceptance, inspection, delivery, installations, invoices will not be paid until the using agency complete the inspection and the goods are accepted, and delivery is not considered to have occurred until the installation is complete, and which includes the disposal of waste and debris from the site. Vendor complaints, they are documented by the end user, the contract administrator, and if that is not resolved at that level, then formal vendor complaints will pull my office, the purchasing office, into it, and then we will do a more formal process, which includes a cure letter with some actions and deadlines involved with that. For renewals, my office is involved with either renewals or amendments, and so again, I stated that a standard contract for the state is 3 years, and typically that is 1 year with 2 optionable renewable years there. Again, the renewals are optional and they don't have to be exercised. But with each renewal to the contract, we will issue a new purchase order. Remember, I stated that amendments is any change that's made to the contract after it has been awarded, and so only the purchasing office can do that, change the terms of the contract. For vendor protests, you do have an opportunity for if you object to the way an award was made, you must be specific. You must submit a written request, and you must be specific on your reasons and provide any support and documentation for the protest. In other words, we have to do what we say we're going to do. We have to evaluate using the criteria that we say we're going to, the way we say we're going to do it. If you feel like we have not done that, and you can be specific and point and provide support and documentation to that, you have a right to submit a protest to the procurement director for awards up to $50,000, and then for non-IT, you can you would submit it to the Division of Purchase and Contracts that's within the Department of Administration. For IT, obviously, we go to the statewide IT procurement office, which is within DIT. And those, the state purchasing officer for both agencies will contact the agency, obviously, that awarded the contract, because they would need to have some input as well. But just because of the amount of delegation, that's what you do. You send the letter to the procurement director, and she will obviously notify or let the state purchasing officer be aware of it, that is happening, and that is being handled. But there is a vendor protest process, and you can use it if it's applicable. Public records requests, I did speak briefly about that. That's an opportunity for you to request to receive awarded contract documents. Each agency may process public records requests differently, so you want to contact the agency to see how you do that. Some records are provided may include redacted information, or redacted, that's when information being blacked out or removed completely. Vendors do have, when you submit your proposals or your responses, you do have the opportunity to identify information as confidential, right, or proprietary. With the exception of pricing, the state will not accept, and we will tell you by a clarifying letter, if you send us a response and you indicate that you want your price to be kept confidential, we will not do that. And we're going to tell you by a clarifying letter, the state, that we will not keep your price confidential. Any other thing that you identify within your submission as confidential. We're going to send you another clarification letter to let you know that we see that you have identified this information as confidential. If you do not rescind that confidentiality and it remains, we're going to let you know that if we get a challenge, a legal challenge to that information, then becomes your responsibility to defend that in court. The state is not going to defend information that you identified as confidential, right? We're going to let you know that we will hold it confidential, but if someone takes us to court to get that information, then you will have to defend it. We will not, right? And so that information, that's part of the process, but you do have the right to, for any awarded contract, to request, make a public records request to get that information. These are some quick website resources. Again, you're going to get this information from Carla when she sends it out. And Carla, that concludes my, if there's any questions, I'm at the end of our presentation.
That is wonderful. Thank you, everyone, for holding your questions until we got through those modules. I wanted to make sure nothing was missed by any of our vendors that may have had to leave. And so we're ready to entertain any questions that you may have. And I do see we have one hand raised, and we will start with that particular person to get their question answered. And if not, if anyone can raise your, oh, there you go, Ariella. If you want to ask your question, you're welcome to do so now.
Hi. First, thank you and congratulations for your incredible and nice presentation. It was very helpful. My question is, at the beginning of this presentation, you mentioned that first, for a clarification, if I understand well, less than $50,000, you request RFQs, right? Request for codes. More than $50,000, you request solicitations, right? So I understand from the beginning of the conversation that you had mentioned that RFQs, usually we had to contact the liaison officer. On your presentation for a EVP, for the Electronic Vendor Portal, my question is, do these RFQs are also listed in the portal or only through the liaison officer?
Thank you for the question. They are not. So what's in the portal are advertised information. So if we advertise it, that's what goes in the portal, right? So the RFQ is typically used for informal bids, and so it could be 29,000 or less, or in some cases it could be up to the $50,000. So in those instances, that's when we are going to email the RFQ to vendors that have been identified, right? We're going to go to the portal. We're going to look for that commodity code that's associated with the good and or service, right? And then we're going to select the vendor. We're looking for hub vendors. That's an opportunity for us to handpick them, right? So we're looking for a vendor that can provide that, right? And another way I'm saying that you can make sure that that information is also known is to contact the vendor, hub vendor liaison that's associated with most agencies. Again, you want to keep your name, your business, and your contact information fresh in front of folks because you're looking for work, right? We get that, right? And we do a lot of soliciting, right? We don't want anyone to fall through the cracks. So make sure, we have a responsibility, but you have one as well. And the fact that you're on this call shows that you understand that. So we really appreciate that. But yes, those things are not advertised, so they are not out there somewhere for you to see. That's why it's important, I say, to make sure that your vendor information, your vendor selections within the portal are accurate and current, and that you check your emails, that we haven't reached out to you and you haven't responded, right? Because again, we're trying to meet a need within the agency, right? So we're gonna give you, depending, upon, a day or two, but we're gonna move forward, right? So make sure you're checking your emails. Make sure we have your contact information that's current. Make sure you have specified specifically that good and service that you're able and willing to provide to the state, and that you want to stick your name, your reputation, your company's name onto, because you get an opportunity. It is really important that you do well, because that encourages folks to go, to it gives you that experience, in that, word of mouth. It happens just like it does in any other industry, right?
So it means that you take some proactive looking for
Yes.
for vendors that are registered in your
Right. Well,
site.
we have to for RFQs, right? We're not when we post items, then the response comes to us through either mail or electronically, right?
Yeah.
If we are not going to advertise it, then we have to find the vendor. So we have to make
Okay.
proactive steps to do that. You're correct.
Just one
Yes.
last question. I'm sorry, I don't want to monopolize the conversation, but I was away. I had to go to the front office to solve a problem. Can you please clarify? I heard from the conversation that you have to send one request for one RFQ for one minority company at least.
Yes, that's our goal,
did
right?
you-
Our goal is that we get at least one response from a hub vendor. We don't
Okay.
always do that because we don't get responses. So that's our
Okay.
goal. So we make sure that, that information is out there, the, hub office is aware of it. Our Office of Civil Rights is aware of it, but we are dependent upon for advertised offers, right, to get responses back. So that's our goal. So what we try to make sure the right people know, right, and that is
Okay.
there. So yes,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Nicole, I see your hand is raised. If you want to unmute.
Yes, thank you so much for the opportunity, and thank you so much for the presentation. My name is Nicole Walker with J&W Logistics. I wanted to know, I'm in the process of actually submitting a bid, but I also wanted to reach out to the point of contact of the bid, but I really don't know what specific questions that I should be asking that can set me apart of all of the other bids that they will receive, and like what kind of information should I kind of be asking for
Okay, so if there's a,
besides
I'm sorry.
the public record request, what else can I do for the information? Because this is my first time submitting a bid, and I'm kind of lost.
Right, and I appreciate that. Thank you for the honesty. So
Yes.
the question period is to give you an opportunity to ask the question that's specific to what is in the solicitation, right? So, will you accept? You said you need 15 days delivery. Will you accept 17 days? Whatever, right? Just a question. If there's a requirement that's in the listing that's in the solicitation document, and you have a question related to that, maybe I said I wanted I don't know, I'm building a house, and I said that I wanted it is I gotta have 3 garages. Maybe you want to know, but I only have 1 car. Am I willing to accept a 2-car garage or 1 car? Okay. Will I take a detached garage? Just if there's a question related to a requirement that's in the document that you think will help you to be a better response or whatever, ask the question. That's the opportunity to do that. Your question specifically is about what question can you ask that will give you a better view from the awardee a water process perspective, that isn't what the question session is for. So they're not going to make a judgment on you based on your question, right? We're just going to get you an answer and make sure we publicize that. The opportunity to your question is how to make the best presentation. I think there are a couple ways to do that, right? But if you're right here and something has already, and the bid has already been posted, and you're working against the clock because you have to have your submission in by the deadline day and time, right? So if time does not allow for the public records process to occur, right? And maybe time is not gonna, but outside of that, say you just had time, right? I would make sure I understand the department enough to understand what they're asking for and what they are going to need, right? I would have already tried to make a contact inside of the agency so that they know that I'm out there and what I can provide, right? Those opportunities to have a site visit, those opportunities to attend a program that they're having, that I'm there, I'm stating my name, what I'm looking for, what I'm able to do. I'm doing that networking piece that is there, right? I'm paying attention to other folks, that doing the same thing that I'm doing. Is there an opportunity to collaborate together? Are they offering something that that I'm not, and that gives them an edge? Can I do that? What's my growth potential? So there's a lot of things that you can look at. But once the bid is submitted, then once the bid is posted, then your time, there's a window of time or opportunity to respond to that. So I get at that point, you pretty much, you may have time to do a public records, depending on how quickly you can get a response back from the agency, right? But I would have asked for that information before the bid was even posted, because one, I'm trying to make sure I understand what that process looks like. And then, I would have made sure I tried to make some contact with an agency that I'm trying to get that work with, so that I could understand a little bit about that person or their agency and what they're doing. And more importantly, or as important, is to make sure they recognize my name, my business, and what I'm trying to do.
At this time, on behalf of our director, Alicia Lyon, and the Hub team, Joni, thank you so much for partnering with us to present this very valuable information. I thank you to our vendors who've taken time out of their busy days to join us and to learn and to hopefully propel themselves to a successful future. And I also thank my Hub teammates and colleagues for your support behind the scenes. You are awesome as usual. And again, thank you to each and every one of you, and go and enjoy your day.